Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you are on this fine planet, for another special edition of WOWSA Live with my co-host, Antonio. Antonio?
Muy buenos días, muy buenas tardes, muy buenas noches. Hoy estamos desde California, la Ciudad de México, Cape Town, en Queensland. Es WOWSA Live!
Yeah. Well, welcome everybody. This is truly a global show today. We have a guest from Cape Town in South Africa. We have another guest from Queensland on the Gulf Coast of Australia. We have Antonio from Mexico City and myself in Southern California. Welcome, Cameron. Welcome, Lynton.
Thanks, Steve.
Yeah.
Very great to be here, Steve.
And we'll start with Cameron. Just give our listeners a brief or very lengthy, in both of your cases, description of your career.
Okay. I'll try to keep it brief. But yeah, I actually grew up from the age of 13 rowing, and that was mainly my sports at high school and then university. Which I guess culminated in the highlights of that part of my life was representing South Africa for a couple of years in my university days at Under 23 World Championships, and but then I kind of gave up on that dream, the Olympic dream, because I think it was going to be too much for me to try to pursue that career, and I didn't do that well on the international stage at those age group levels. And so I transitioned a little bit, and I actually moved. I never actually swam at all, junior school, high school, university. I think my last swimming race was when I was about 9 years old at a school inter-house gala, where I swam the underwater race. And so even back then I wasn't a good swimmer. But about 9 years ago, when I was probably, I think I was 29 or 28 years old, I decided to set up a charity and start pursuing more athletic endurance goals. And previously being a rower, I wanted to row across an ocean, but also always had this dream of potentially swimming across the English Channel. And so that's actually where it started. So I wasn't a good swimmer. Actually, I could swim, but I wouldn't drown. But I'd never swum anything before in pool or open water. And so 8 months before I swam the English Channel, I started getting coaching by a coach in London called Ray Gibbs, who taught me in an endless pool with a pool with a current in it. And he taught me extremely well. The drills that he taught me, even those first few lessons, I still do those same drills the day before I'll do 150 kilometer swim. So I think it's testament to his coaching, because I ended up swimming the English Channel, kind of just made it. I scraped through it in 16 hours, but then I kind of got the bug, and I love the training the training part of it, and then also executing a swim. And so for the last number of years, I decided to pursue Steven Munatones' creation, the Ocean 7, which is an amazing group of 7 swims around the world, which are very picturesque and kind of remote in some cases, and just amazing swims. And so that's where I kind of cut my teeth on open water swimming. And since then, after finishing those, my goals have kind of increased in warm water. I've done 2 really big swims around Barbados, which was 100 kilometers in 40 hours. And recently another swim from Barbados to St. Lucia, which was 150 odd kilometers in about 57 hours, which was extreme. That definitely it's taken me about 5 or 6 years to build myself up to that level of training, and especially on the mental side, to be able to do a swim like that. And also I've transitioned back every once in a while to rowing. I rowed across the Indian Ocean in about 2 months. It took me about 2 months in 2014, and recently rowed from South America to Antarctica in last December. The first people to do that, and that's when we achieved a number of world records. So yeah, it's been a busy couple of years, and I'm looking forward to keep on going on the swimming side. I've got some pretty big goals coming up for big swims.
Great. great. And now we have the Sea Bull, and he's got that nickname for a very good reason. And can you explain that in addition to describing your career?
Yeah, well, I guess starting out with your introduction there, it's a hard one to follow with Cam. It makes you feel very inadequate hearing his extraordinary achievements, and such a humble man too, and a good mate. But yeah, the Sea Bull was a nickname that was given to me and one of my other mates from Brisbane when we finished Rottnest Island swim, and we're a couple of big looking units, and when we came out of the water, he said we looked like a couple of bulls in a cage. So Sea Bull sort of stuck from there, and my swimming, I actually love the rough and tumble conditions. They're my favourite. That's my favourite environment. You get into a rhythm with the sea, so I probably got noted for doing a few big sea swims, and the Sea Bull seems to have stuck. But unlike Cam, I did have a swimming background in my earlier days. I'm 55, 56 this year, but through school, I swam from my school, and then having finished school and my studies at my law, swimming fell aside, and as did most sports, and I probably enjoyed life a little bit too much. And I came back to the swimming much later in life. 2012 was, so I had about a 30-year break or so, and the reason was I tore my bicep tendon off the bone when I was mucking around on the beach with my two boys. So I got that surgically reattached. Couldn't move my hand for about 6 months or more, and did a lot of rehab, and that involved swimming. And I was pretty excited. I remember the first time when I made 500 metres, and then I got to a kilometre, and just started building the marks from there, and started enjoying the pool. But I've always had an affinity with the sea, and so Strait started putting on a few ocean races, and I started participating in them, and progressively built it from 2 to 5Ks to the 10K swim, and then probably a bit like Cam, we had a bit of a calling to go do the English Channel. We had to one of the legends of Australian ocean water was Des Renford. I always remember him growing up as a lad, and I thought that'd be an amazing feat to undertake the English Channel. And I started training with Trent Grimsey, and we just did a few stepping stones. So one was Rottnest Island, and that was a 20K swim. I thought, well, if I can tick that one off, I should be right. And then for your Ocean Sevens, got a lot to thank you for there, Steve. We've had an extraordinary journey, not just from a swimming perspective, but with the family, the incredible friends you get to meet. And I probably regard ocean swimming as the best team sport I've ever played in my life. It's just, we don't get there without the support group, the boats, the pilots. So yeah, it's from that perspective, it's been just absolutely fantastic. But after thinking about the English Channel, I got into the idea of the North Channel, and I travel to London twice a year from work. So I thought, well, while I'm over there, I might see if I can do both at the same time. And Trent Grimsey was my coach, and I said, well, what do you think? I've got a 2-week window. And he said, well, all sounds a bit crazy, but his coach always had a view that anything worth doing is worth overdoing. So we decided to give that a crack, and fortunately was lucky enough to achieve both of them a couple of weeks apart. And then went on to Catalina and Molokai and Sugaroo and Cook and the rest of the 7. So yeah, and fortunately as well, I've done a lot of other ocean swims around the world, quite apart from the Ocean 7. So yeah, it's I live, breathe, and eat it. I love the ocean. I've got to get my vitamin C as often as I can.
Yeah, that's great. I'm going to, for listeners who don't know what the Ocean 7 is, it's 7 channels around the world. And let's go around the horn here. Antonio, you. and I'm going to say the name of the channel. Then I'd like you to explain in briefly your journey on that channel, including DNFs, did not finish, and your success. And we'll start off with a smaller one, the Strait of Gibraltar. Go ahead, Antonio. Strait of Gibraltar. What?
Well, the Strait of Gibraltar was my coming back to swimming after almost 7 years after I did the Triple Crown in 1 year. And I've always tell the story that for me, Gibraltar was the unexpected because I traveled from Mexico City for 34 hours, arrived at 3 o'clock in the morning, and I had a note from Nora saying that if I wanted to swim, I had to be in the deck next morning at 9 o'clock. So with 6 hours after 34 hours of traveling, I jumped into the Gibraltar, and I would always remember it as how unpredictable life is. That's what Gibraltar told me.
And Cameron, your Strait of Gibraltar venture?
Yeah, actually, I went to swim Strait of Gibraltar. It was 4 years after the English Channel, and it was my next swim after the English Channel because I'd taken a break to row across the Indian Ocean, and so I hadn't swum for a while. And I went to Tarifa. I called my mom and told her to come with me because my father just passed away, and so she was here by herself. And so my mom was there, which was quite special. But as everyone, well, a lot of people know, is that the Strait of Gibraltar is it's like the kite surfing and windsurfing capital of the world. It's so windy there, and so we had booked Raphael, the captain, for a week, and we never swam because it was like gale force winds every day. And then I went to Raphael and I said, "Hey man, I still want to swim. I don't need to go back to work just yet. I can stay for an extra week." And he's like, "That's cool, but there's 2 people that I've booked next week." And that was a guy called Steve Walker and a girl called Amy Gubza, who all of us, 4 of us here know, obviously quite well because they're amazing swimmers too. And the swim went really well eventually. We swam together. We had perfect conditions, and it was just beautiful, especially swimming into Morocco. Such a beautiful coastline and such an amazing body of water full of so much life. And that whole swim changed my life because I actually ended up moving to San Francisco to work with Steve, and Steve's been my mentor ever since then on the swimming side and work side. So yeah, that swim has amazing, brings back amazing memories, but also is it definitely shaped the way I swim now and the way my career.
Got it. And Lynton, your...
Yeah, but very. I was like a kid in an ollie shop on that swim. That was my first of the Ocean Sevens, and it was unusual. We weren't meant to go the morning that I did, but we got a phone call about 2 or 3 hours before the start, and said the boat ahead of you, the Russians, their boat's broken down. Can you get down? So we literally raced down to the harbour and jumped in, and away we went. It was quite poignant for me because it was the anniversary of the passing of my dear mum. So that had special significance. And I've told Antonio before, he knows I swam with 2 Mexican sisters and a Spanish girl, and we all had our respective families on the same boat, and it was just like a party boat. The cheering and the shouting all the way across. I can still hear Lynton, go Lynton! Stay with me forever, that one. I still keep in contact with them as well. They're wonderful ladies.
Great. So we've got the Strait of Gibraltar between Spain and Morocco, and now we'll head up north to the English Channel, the iconic English Channel. How was your experience there, Antonio?
Well, my first open water swim was the English Channel when I turned 40 in 1999, and it was terrible because it took me 18 hours and 19 minutes, and it was a very long day, as you can imagine. And the thing that I remember is that when I got on the boat, a friend of mine who works on TV, he wanted to interview me, and he said, "You beat the ocean." And so I turned around and I looked at the ocean and I said, no, I don't think I beat him. The ocean is still very strong, and it's still there. You know, I was fortunate to be able to go across the channel, and that was a big lesson for me, because I always say that you have to be respectful to for Mother Nature, and especially the ocean. I mean, every time I swim, I think about how the ocean is giving me the opportunity to have to swim and to enjoy my swims, and it's not a fight. To me, it's just asking for permission and having to have a wonderful day. That's what I remember about the channel.
Great. And Cameron?
Yeah, so yeah, it was my first swim ever, and as I mentioned before, I didn't swim very well, and so it was a struggle for me. I think it took us 16 and a half hours, and there's one point at like 14 hours, I remember that I didn't think I wanted to carry on. It was an early swim, so it was cold too, which I wasn't used to, and the sun had set, and I had a friend who swam the exact same time as me, separate boats, and he had just been pulled out, and so I wasn't feeling very good at 14 and a half hours, low in morale. And I went to the boat and I said, guys, like, I'm not sure today's my day. And my mom was luckily on the crew, and with one of my best friends and my girlfriend, and my best friend was like, come on, Cam, keep going. And my girlfriend was like, keep going, Cam. And then my mom, like, very sternly looked at me and she says, like, it's like, Cameron, you're not getting in this boat until you get to France. And like, she said it very aggressively, and like there are a few features in that sentence too that I can't mention, but I was like, I remember thinking, I was like, wow, just like chill out, like I'll keep going. And so I just kept plugging away, and eventually I got into like blue water and managed to get in. But it was quite close because the currents, as you guys know, the currents can push you quite quickly into the North Sea. And if you get pushed away from the coastline, which is moving away from you because of the angle, you won't make it. So it was quite close, almost didn't make it, but touching sand in France was probably one of the best memories I have. But sand between your fingers when you crawl onto shore was an amazing feeling, and it's kind of that feeling kept me going since then. I'm just want to do more and more swims.
Yeah. And Lynton, your English Channel experience?
Yeah, I was very fortunate on that one. I had a strong swim, and it was my first significant distance at that 34K mark. So I had actually trained the house down under Trent's tutelage there. So I was well prepared, and because I was taking on the North Channel, I spent a week or two with the Great South End Rowing Club, acclimatising to the water over there. So when I arrived in England and then up to Ireland for the North, I was confident, knowing that this Queenslander from the tropics could handle such cold waters. And I had a particularly strong swim. And I'm very blessed and lucky that I had my family with me on all of my swims. On that occasion, my two sons were with me, and had the great support there. Des Renford's boat, the old Viking Princess, with the boys there, and Tim Denyer from Red Top as well, who never took his eyes off you the whole way. So I feel very comfortable and confident that I knew I'd done the training for that one, and then just had the best support there along the way. I didn't quite have Cam's experience of getting that sand between the fingers on the beach, because I had to climb up the rock face. It was high tide, I think, when we got in. But it was an exhilarating feeling, certainly, to achieve that. That was right up there.
Great.
And Lynton, what you didn't say is you came from Brisbane, hot water. We have the cold water body.
Yeah, true. pretty warm where we come from over here.
Yeah. And for listeners who don't know, Lynton has actually been referring to Trent, his coach. Trent Grimsey is one of history's greatest marathon swimmers. He currently holds the world record for the English Channel, one of only 2 people in history to cross the English Channel from England to France under 7 hours. So he is learning from the best.
Extraordinary.
Yeah. So
Absolutely.
we'll go from England and France way over on the other side of the globe to Molokai, which is a very difficult channel, warm water between the island of Molokai and the island of Oahu in Hawaii. And Antonio, what was your experience?
Well, as a couple of weeks ago, Mike said, I hold not a Guinness record like Cameron, but I hold the longest swim of Molokai. It took me 23 hours and 18 minutes, and it was a very difficult swim for me. We had to start at a different starting point, and it was really complicated when at 10 hours I approached the boat, and Nora told me that we hadn't gone even 50% of the swim. So in my mind, I started feeling I was very afraid, because I started doubting that I would be able to finish. My longest swim had been 17 years ago, and it was only 18 minutes, and here it was. I was in front of almost a 24-hour swim. And what it made it very complicated was the jellyfishes. I got stung all over my face and my body. And, when I arrived at the 18-hour point, I always tell the story that I thought it was going to be like Cinderella. I wanted to see what happened if I disappeared, because it was the longest I had swum. And that was a turning point in my swimming, in that swim, because as Cameron was saying, the boat is always there, and you can just go 25 meters and it'll be finished. And in my mind, it was always thinking, would I be able to finish and go the next hours? And I just, what made it possible is that I changed the way I was thinking about the problem. Rather than thinking that I was going to be swimming 24 hours, I decided that it was just going to be 5 hours. And for anybody in open water swimming, from Lynton, Cameron, you, Steven, Nora, who's watching right now, 5 hours on a weekend is just a weekend swim. So I decided I would look at the next 5 hours, just if it was a Saturday, swimming in Las Estacas. And that's what made me finish probably the second most complicated Ocean 7 for me.
Wow. Cameron?
Yeah, also with Antonio on this one, like it was a long swim for me too. I did it with Steve Walker, who I mentioned before. I think we did it close to 17 or 18 hours, and which was for me the longest that I'd swum out to that day too. And what struck me was the wildlife. We saw a tiger shark relatively close, but it looked very relaxed, and it was actually quite nice to see it, because the shark was so chilled out that it almost made us more relaxed. And straight afterwards, we were joined by a pod of dolphins who swam next to me for like 5 or 10 minutes, which was my first experience like that. And the water is so clear that you can see them, like they're so visual, and they're next to you. And the shark was 40, 50 meters away, but we can see it really clearly too. So that was nice, because I did all of my swimming in Dover Harbor up until then, and San Francisco Bay, where you can't even see your hand in front of you. So that was amazing. And also the jellyfish / man o' war. I got stung by a Portuguese man o' war, and it was my first experience with something stinging you, which is much more. I worry about jellyfish and those kind of things much more than sharks, because I feel like their effect on you and the pain, but also the neurotoxins, just really affects you quite badly. And Lynton has some stories about that, for sure, which I'll mention. But yeah, I love the swim. It was the first time I'd done a swim where I finished it feeling like strong, and I think it was also because it was my first warm swim. I'm not a great cold water swimmer, but yeah, I felt really strong afterwards in light of the Portuguese man o' war sting. And it was just a beautiful piece of water, and there's so much life in it that yeah, it's one of my favorite swims for sure.
Got it. Lynton?
Yeah, I'd have to agree with Cameron. That's one of my favourites for a variety of reasons. But Molokai is probably my introduction to two of the deadliest marine creatures in the world. 2 weeks before Molokai, my local breakdown here is on the Gold Coast from Snapper Rocks, famous surf break, up to Currumbin, which is about an 8K swim. And at Snapper Rocks, I was walking into the water with a good mate of mine, Cameron, and I stood on a stonefish.
Ooh.
And the pain was, if you hadn't actually cut your leg off, then that's sounds like it exaggerating, but you would. It was that bad. So I was 2 days in intensive care with a morphine drip in one arm and a ketamine drip in the other arm. And I think the swimming was something that really helped me get through that with the breathing, because you can see why people die from it, because you just hyperventilate. So that was quite confronting. And then I wasn't allowed in the water for about 2-3 weeks. Or I wasn't meant to be for 2 to 3 weeks. And then Molokai was exactly 3 weeks away. And I went back to work after that little adventure, not being in the water. And about a week before my due date, I got a phone call from my pilot saying the trade winds are coming in for your window. It's going to get blown out. Can you get here in the next 48 hours and we can go? I said, well, I haven't been in the water for a couple of weeks, just recovered from a stonefish, but I'm on my way. So
Wow.
said goodbye to a couple of partners at work, walking out the door, phoned the travel agent on the way home, phoned my wife, and one of my sons was free. So we packed our bags and literally went straight to the airport, flew from Brisbane to Sydney, Sydney to Molokai, Sydney to Oahu, threw the bags for the hotel on a taxi. He took them in there in faith, went to charter the flight to the island direct. And as you know, that's an hour, 2 hour flight. You get to the island and you jump in a taxi. I think it's about another half hour or so, 40 minutes to the beach. Had no idea, what Molokai was or what it was meant to be. We phoned ahead for Mike Twigg-Smith, who you all know, the pilot. So he was on his way from Oahu, having never met him, only spoken to him once on the phone. Got to the beach. My son sort of put the cream and suntan block all over me, and then jump in the water. And they said to my son, well, you have to swim out to the boat too, mate. So he was away. And that was it. So we had a 24-hour flight off straight down to the beach. 8 minutes, walked straight into the water. No warm up. I think my food prep was a 2-day-old egg roll that was left in the Molokai shop. And then we went all through the night. But I always remember what that was, the Milky Way. Even when you stop for your feeds and even when you're swimming, it's just the most extraordinary place to view that constellation. Extraordinary. Anyway, I got within about, and I swam all through the night, and it was some fairly big swell, getting bumped around, and got through the night, and it was just about sun up, and I think we only had about 4 or 5 Ks to go. So for me, I was going, well, that's my local break, just a sort of a standard swim. So I had that in my mind. Started working out what I was going to have for breakfast, because I was getting pretty hungry and sick of all the electrolytes. And then just as that sun was coming up, we're crossing the shelf, and then I got to swim into a whole swarm of box jellyfish.
Oh,
I got so one wrapped around one leg, stopped and had the guttural scream for that. Regrouped, went again, swam about another 20 meters. The other leg got wrapped up, more pain, and then I knew we were there. And I kept thinking, well, what we've achieved from the flight to there, we just got to do it. And unfortunately, we went on for about another 20 or so meters, but then I had a couple of others, one wrapped around my neck, under my armpits, across my stomach. So, and then my body just shut down, and the kayaker just had to get there because I couldn't move. So they sort of pulled me onto the boat, phoned ahead for the ambulance. The ambulance was waiting for me in the harbour as I sped to the harbour, and Angel, Gary, who you know quite well, spoke with her afterwards, and so she was saying that had the Irukandji syndrome, so straight to intensive care there, on a drip on morphine, and the welts. If anyone hasn't seen the box jellyfish, you come up in these massive welts. It's like being, I can only describe it as being like electrocuted, and then someone drawing over you with a hot welding iron. Is probably give you an idea of the pain for that one. And then while in hospital, my son put my darling wife on the phone, and the first thing she said, I was sort of expecting, "How are you? You going to get through this? You all right, darling?" And I was just going, "So when are you going again?" were the first words out of her mouth. And I just said, "Oh, too soon even for you." But that was the prompt, and I sort of thought about it. And anyway, as it turned out, I made the decision to go again quickly. So 10 days later, I just tried to recover from that adventure. And then 10 days later, we went again, and Angel had given me some creams to assist on the swims to try and block any stings. And then it's quite an emotional swim, the second one. When I got to the beach, I was feeling fine, but I think it hadn't quite processed what had gone on before, and became very emotional, and also just think, "Oh God, what happens if this is going again?" Because when I got stung the first time, I just swore to myself, I will never swim again in an ocean. This is it. My swimming is over. But you find yourself back there 10 days later and doing the same thing. And I got stung by a box on the arm within about the first hour. And that was sort of quite confronting, but the creams helped, and then we went on. I got stung again about another hour after that, and then regrouped, but then swam through the whole night, no issues. And then when we got to around about the same place, we started a bit earlier so that we'd get over the shelf this time, hopefully before first sun. And I got stung about 3 k's out again, but fortunately it was only just the one. And then that was probably the greatest moment for me when I swam into the shore. Was my son swam in, and my other son and daughter had caught a cab and followed the journey around. They met me down on the beach, and to have them there, and my wife, that was really, really special, and quite poignant for me as well. And it was a wonderful birthday swim.
Wow.
As was the English Channel, coincidentally, another birthday swim there. So I let out a roar of thanks rather than pain at the end of that one. Yeah,
Wow.
It was a very special swim.
Wow. For our listeners who don't know, Dr. Angel Yanagihara is the world's foremost expert on box jellyfish. And she came up with a anti-venom protective cream that
Yes.
I highly recommend to everybody, as I assume, Lynton, you would too.
Yeah. I look 100%. And she's an outstanding person, Angel, apart from being one of the world leaders, and just so giving up her time. And as I say, with the creams, if you've never been stung by box jellyfish, I sincerely hope you never do. But take every advantage you can, because it is a pain like no other.
Yeah. Even more than the stonefish.
Well, yeah, I get asked that question a bit, actually. Which one's the worst? And pound for pound, you'd have to say the stonefish. It just it's relentless, the pain. Even ketamine and morphine, it didn't really help in the end.
Oh wow. Okay, we'll go from the jellyfish channel of Molokai over to California. In Southern California, there's the Catalina channel from Santa Catalina Island to the California mainland. And how was your experience in that, Antonio?
Well, if you count how many times I've done Catalina, I would say that, I enjoyed it a lot. It's, I've done it 6 times in my lifetime. As you asked me one day, what are you going to be doing when you are 90 years old? Hopefully I'll be going with my grandson or granddaughter to doing Catalina on a tandem. I know that's not permitted, but at 90, the officials might say yes. No, Catalina for me is like, I see Catalina as my ocean swimming pool. That's how I look at it. It's, as Ned Dennison said a couple of weeks ago, it's the only swim that you know at what time you're going to start, in which day. I mean, just fly to California, you go to Newport, and you go on the boat and you start at 12 o'clock at night. And I have had different experiences with Catalina, two of them very complicated. As you remember, in '97, when you had the fires in October, that was a very rough time for me, very high waves. And then when I was trying to achieve Ocean 7, I did it in January. And everybody was asking me, why do you go through that pain to go in January? And as the three of us, Lynton, Cameron, and I come from countries with hot water oceans. So for us, the big question all the time is, would I be able to cope with the cold? And that was the year I had two more swims, Cook and the North Channel. And I had been training with, as a matter of fact, I had been training all year, the year before with Cameron on many occasions in the Southern Rowing Club. We're both members of the Southern Rowing Club, proud members of the Southern Rowing Club. We tell each other great stories in the sauna. And we won't say the other things we do in the sauna, like drinking, but I wasn't sure that I was going to be able to cope with the cold water. So I wanted to go to Catalina in January and do that swim. And that was a swim, it took me 14 hours and 24 minutes, but it was 14 degrees Celsius. And after that, I was sure I was going to be able to make the Cook Strait and the North Channel. I was able to cope with the cold water.
Got it. And Cameron?
Yeah, it was it's my first long swim after the English Channel, and I trained a lot for it, but about 5 weeks before, I fell off my bicycle and I sprained my wrist, and so I took like 4 weeks to recover from that when I couldn't swim, and then there was only a week left where I probably did like 2 swims, and so I kind of went into it nervous that I might not have the fitness because I hadn't swum in about 5 weeks. But it was a beautiful swim. Also, it's same with like Molokai. It's not too cold, and there's a lot of life in there in the water. And I had a great swim with a great crew. The crew especially. I'm not sure if I can talk about this, but getting into, you start at night. I think I started at 11 p.m. and about 2 a.m. in the morning. My support swimmer, Kim Chambers, who all of us know, is also an Ocean 7 swimmer, an amazing girl, amazing person. She jumped in the water and she swam with me for an hour. And then at about, I wanted her to come join me at 4 a.m. too, because it was an hour until sunrise. And I knew I was going to struggle at that point. And so when she jumped in 30 minutes before she jumped in, I was like, hey, are you gonna come? Are you gonna swim again? And she's like, yeah, I'll swim in 30 minutes. And I was like, I was just joking. I said, are you gonna swim naked? And she said, she just anyway, 30 minutes later, I wasn't expecting it, but like Kim jumped in naked next to me. Beautiful girl.
Throat rate increase.
I was like, if you're swimming naked, I'm gonna swim naked too. So I took off my Speedo and we swam naked together, which was amazing. Obviously, it's dark, so I couldn't unfortunately see much. But it was awesome. And then the sun came up, so I put my Speedo back on because I might get a bad sunburn. And then also after that, I just loved the swim so much. It was a beautiful sunrise, beautiful conditions. And then I eventually arrived into Los Angeles and finished the swim. And, it was an amazing crew. Like, Steve Walker was in the crew. He was the only guy. But then there was also Amy Gubza. There was 2 female observers. There was Kim. There was a female cook. And, Kim, as an amazing person she is, like, she had riled up the whole crew. And when I swam back to the boat, which is, very 50-meter swim back, maybe more, all the girls in the crew jumped in naked to come and congratulate me in the water. For those
I
reasons,
think I need to swim with you more, Cam.
yeah. We need to recruit some female crew. But yeah, it was so yeah, those reasons it yeah, it was special memories.
Yeah. And Lynton, your crew in Catalina?
Yeah, nothing quite as exotic as Cameron's. Mine was fairly pedestrian, but once again, I mean, I was incredibly lucky. I had my family with me on board, and I was very fortunate on that swim. I had great conditions from go to woe, and I probably needed them because when I arrived in LA, I picked up some virus on the way over, and I was laid up in bed for 4 days. I just couldn't get out of bed, and I think it was about. I had another 2 days before the swim, and I was even wondering whether I should be doing it because but my dear wife Lisa said, "No, you'll be fine. You'll be right. You've got this." And I said, "Oh, okay, yeah, I've got it. I have." And I was right till about halfway, and then halfway I was just absolutely spent. And I think if the conditions were tougher, I would have certainly struggled to get there for the second half. But I limped across the line for the second half, and I was so gone I couldn't even stand up at the end. It's the first time I couldn't. I had to crawl up on my hands and knees, and took me everything I had to actually stand up to, when I got over my hands and knees. And then I said to my wife on the way back, I said, "Look, I was really wondering whether I was going to make that at one stage." She goes, "Yeah, me too." I said, "You're the one who told me to do it." She goes, "Well, what else am I going to say?" So.
A question here. Did all of you eat the same type of food or take the same type of drink in Catalina or Molokai or Strait of Gibraltar or English Channel? Or were they different kinds of foods? Antonio?
No, I always eat the same thing. Axle gel, diluted in about 375 milliliters of water, and that's always what I drink. I drink it at the first hour and then every 30 minutes afterwards. That suits me very well.
Yeah, and Cameron?
Yeah, I used to keep it quite consistent. When I did the English Channel the first time, Mrs. Streeter, I forget her first name, Rita Streeter, I think his name is, who's a legendary swim coach. She told me to drink a carbohydrate mix, Maxim, and I drink Carbo Pro, which is the same thing. And it's always worked for me. My kidneys have always been good, which is, your main thing you got to look out for in these long swims is how your kidneys, flush all the toxins and out. And yeah, it's always worked. I've always used it, and I've used the same for all my swims, cold and warm.
Got it. And Lynton, you?
I think to begin with, we had a lady in Queensland, Tara Diversity, is a nutritionist that works with Trent as well, and she sort of writes you a bit of a program to follow. And I think in my early swims, I probably followed that reasonably closely, but I became a bit more sort of adventurous and try a few different things as I go along. And I'll eat just about anything now. I mean, on the Cook Strait, Phil Rush said, "Would you want a meat pie, mate?" About halfway across, and I said, "I'd kill for one." And I said, "You got sauce with that?" And he goes, "Yep." So I had a meat pie and sauce about halfway across. So yeah, I'll do most things.
Well, that's a good segue to the only Ocean 7 swim in the Southern Hemisphere. Lynton, continue with the Cook Strait, which is between the North and South Island in New Zealand. Yeah,
look, it's an incredibly tough swim, the Cook. I think a lot of people think because it's a slightly shorter distance, it's might be a bit easier, but it's got it all there. Cameron was talking about Gibraltar Strait with the winds that come through there. Well, Cook Strait's on the North Island is Windy Wellington, and it's called Windy Wellington for a very good reason. And I had 3 trips to the Cook Strait before I got away. The first time, I think I was meant to do it in March, and I was there for 2 weeks, and it howled every day. So we didn't even get to the harbour to get in the water. So we left there without an opportunity to swim. and then stayed in contact with Phil, and he said, "Look, I'll give you a call if there is an opportunity, and we'll do a fly in, fly out." So I think about a couple of months later, I got a call, and I, once again at work, had the bag packed in the back of the car and straight to the airport. Got to New Zealand about 2 a.m, straight to the harbour, and then it was looking good. But by the time we just about got underway, the howling winds, roaring winds came through again and blowing out. And then finally, the third time, that probably wasn't meant to happen. My dear wife Lisa had a 50th birthday, and I had a surprise birthday party organised for her. And I got a phone call from Phil that night saying, "We're on, in a few days if you want to come." And I said, "Well, I can't tell Lisa it's the 50th right now. Got to focus on that." And then anyway, the next morning we packed up and flew out, and literally got picked up at the airport and straight to the harbour, and in and away we went. And look, it started out with great conditions, and then about halfway across it all changed. Winds came up, currents came down, and then Phil said to me at that stage, he said, "Look, mate, I think we're going to have to call the swim. We're just not making any progress at all." And I had a few colourful choice of words to explain why that wasn't going to happen. And then he said, "Well, I'll give you another hour." And I thought, well, that's just a sort of a token hour. But then I just sort of thought, well, it's now or never. And I probably swam the hardest hour, well, what I thought was the hardest hour I've swam on any of the Ocean Sevens. And then finally I see Phil sort of waving his towel and pumping his fist, and I knew that we were making headway. And then we broke through and picked up again, and we got, I think, about 3 kilometres to go. And I thought, well, that's great. I think Antonio mentioned before about, well, that's a training run. So I sort of pictured that as one of the beaches north of here to where I am now. It's about 3 k's. We'll be there in an hour or less. Well, that 3 k's ended up taking over 3 hours because the big currents came down from the North Islands, and I just kept pushing down, sideways, crabbing all the way down, and then we had to fight back and come back in. So we finished about 9 o'clock at night, and I think I was for my completion. That was the completion of my Ocean Sevens, and I was sort of unceremoniously thrown up by a wave onto a rock ledge, and that was my touching. It was a bit hairy getting out of there too. Phil had the dinging in full reverse and through the rope, and just had to throttle out. It was a boiling pot of water there, but that was just total exhilaration and relief to have achieved that, and very special.
Wow. I mean,
I felt like I earned it.
Yeah.
and there was a lot of challenges there, and I look back at it and I wouldn't have it any other way, because that's it wasn't just a swim that was given to you. You had to go and earn every bit of it. So I was particularly proud of that one.
Yeah. And again, listeners who may not know the name Phillip Rush, Phillip is one of the toughest swimmers, most accomplished channel swimmers in the world. And Lynton, for him to say, "Hey, we got to call the swim," I mean, you're at the border, you're at the edges of extreme conditions, I would assume.
Yeah. Well, we just weren't getting through. So it was but as you say, an extraordinary swimmer. I mean, well, we've still got the record, I think, for the triple English Channel and the double. So,
and Cameron, your Cook Strait experience?
Yeah, similar story to Lynton's. I swam it with Steve again as a tandem, and we cruised the first half. Beautiful conditions. I think we got halfway at 2 hours 50, and so that's extremely quick. And like Steve, I remember looking at me thinking, "Yeah, we could do this in 6 hours." I was like, "No, 7. Like, let's be not too confident." And it ended up taking us over 13 hours. Same thing with Lynton. Like, the currents there must be just, I mean, because that's such a narrow channel and such a lot of water flowing through, it's difficult to predict the currents. And the currents were incorrect, obviously, that day, because we got swept. You're going South Island to North Island, and we got swept so far west that we ended up at the harbor where the boat actually is located. So that was kind of nice because we finished the swim there, and there was kind of like, okay to go to get the boat back, which was quite nice. But yeah, we finished, 10 kilometers, 15 kilometers from where we were supposed to finish, just because the currents just came from nowhere and picked us up. And yeah, it was horrendous because you obviously, at one point you're thinking 7 hours, then 8 hours, then 9 hours, 10 hours, eventually it's 13. And we finished in the dark too, and it was cold. All these swims they've chosen really well because they're just in these amazing locations and such wild water. It's so full of life. I love. And like if it was a 7-hour swim, I'd be talking about it like, it was easy, But like, that was a big one.
Yeah, I want to ask you. You've swum several of these channels with Steve Walker, and we call that tandem swimming. How difficult is it to swim for 13 hours, stroke for stroke, with another individual?
Yeah, there's obviously benefits to swimming with someone else. So you have like motivation because like you're not going to get out of the other guy still swimming. So there's that. That's a positive. I would say that probably the negatives outweigh the positives though, because the negatives are, this is a long swim. And even if you train well with somebody, in a long swim like this, you always have to swim with other person's pace. For example, Steve was swimming much faster than me that swim that day. So I was having to try extra hard to stay with him. And that just really kind of killed me. In the Molokai, I was swimming faster than him and they really killed him. It becomes hard to settle into rhythm because you're always stopping and starting and having to swim faster than you usually do. And that's my experience. And I don't think I'll do another long tandem swim with somebody just because it's too stressful. In both occasions, Molokai, I had to leave Steve behind with about 2 hours to go. And the swim here, Steve left me behind about 2 hours to go. We had to get it from another boat in the water. It's kind of stressful. And it obviously helps that me and Steve train together and we're good friends. But out there, when I'm like waiting for him or he's waiting for me, like you're not friends anymore. You kind of really annoying.
Yeah. And Antonio, your experience down in the Cook Strait?
Well, the first one was very complicated to get Phillip to answer my emails. That's something that probably we all, but for me it was very stressful because it was my 6th swim, and that year was going to be a complicated year for me also at work. But something like what happened to Cameron and Lynton, my first part of the swim was very easy. But once you arrive and you're closer to the South Island, in my case, it was swim from north to south, the currents just, were there and they were pushing me back. So at some point I was swimming parallel to the islands. They were going straight forward because the currents were so hard that they were pushing me. And it took me some effort, about 2.5, 3 hours to be able to break it. And I finally finished it in about, 11 and something hours. And that day, as Lynton was saying, it's so the weather is so unexpected. I mean, the wind just came. After I got out of the water, there was a big storm, and there was so very hard winds. I mean, it was. I was lucky to be able to finish.
Great. So now we're going to go up north, and we're going to head to the Tsugaru Channel. This is. It looks. You could stand on the main island of Japan, which is Honshu, and you look across the channel and you see Hokkaido, the northernmost island of Japan, right there. It apparently is an easy swim. And Lynton, what was your experience in northern Japan?
The culture, obviously totally different to the Western civilization, but I went with my wife and daughter on that occasion, and we tend to try and embrace wherever we go. So we immersed ourselves in the culture and enjoyed that experience immensely. And I think that sort of helped with the relaxation and the whole swim event, and Matthias from Germany, who's doing the Ocean Sevens, he was over there as well at the time, so it was a good friend to catch up with him, do a bit of training as well. There's always challenges with these swims, and you can do all the training in the world, but at the end of the day, it's such a mental game, and I find that there's always something new or something different that's thrown up. You've just got to be able to go with the flow and adapt and just take it in your stride. And on our swim, there was a young German swimmer who was first cab off the rank, and I was the second. And anyway, on her swim, as you know, Stephen, the ship got grounded on some rocks, and I got an email about 2 a.m. in the morning to say, I was swimming the next day, to say, oh, hey, Lynton, I think it was Steve Walker who was on that boat, said, hey, Lynton, just giving you the heads up. I think your swim's going to be off because the boat's no good, the captain's in hospital, and everyone's pretty shook up. So I saw them the next morning, but fortunately the Japanese organisers were able to contact another pilot who I think might have been out fishing on his trawler that night. He came in, and we went the next day. And every channel you go to, it's totally different. I mean, that was my sixth swim, and you feel fairly comfortable. You think, well, I'm fairly comfortable about things, but all of a sudden you're on a fishing trawler that the speed that they go at is quite surprising, and he's just flying around. You've got to go up around the tip of the island, because once again there's a massive amount of water coming from the west to the east, and you've got to sail on the other side of the island. It's almost a horseshoe slingshot in to where you finish, and they drop you. When I was there, it was the blackest night I've ever experienced in any swim I've done at any time in the world. There wasn't a star in the sky. There was no moon. The water was just this squidding black, and the sky matched it. And I said, "Oh, there's a cliff there. You know, it's 100 meters away. So you just got to swim there and touch it and go." And I thought, okay, sure. So you dive in, and I actually felt very disorientated because you had no sense of direction. Yeah. But you sort of made it to the cliff, and then you can't hear the start. You see a bit of a light, and I probably waited there longer than I ought to have. And then by the time I got to the boat, they said, "Well, you took a long time to start." And I said, "Well, you couldn't hear or see, so it's that dark." And about 2 hours into the swim, I know a lot of swimmers that if you don't keep your line, as you know better than anyone, Steve, you're the expert on it. If you don't keep your line, and you go too far to the right, you're gone. You can hardly ever bring it back because the currents are so strong. So we're about 2 hours in, and then when I was breathing to my left, I kept seeing lights, and I couldn't understand why I was seeing lights, because I should be looking to Russia and seeing nothing at all. And then the translation was sort of lost on the boat. I was saying to my wife, and the translator said, "Look, what's going on? Why am I seeing lights?" They're like, "Have I got this miraculous current that's taking me somewhere?" Anyway, after about the third or fourth feed, they worked out that the captain was actually holding me parallel to the shore, yes, into the current. And I think I was just swimming on the spot for an hour or two. Yeah. And then once we broke through that, we're away. And I had I was just very lucky with the currents as they went there. And that was a different swim. So anyone who hasn't done ocean swimming, usually you've got your boat, you got your kayak support, or a jet ski in some cases. But in this, it's the only one in the world that I'm aware of. They run a ribbon underneath the boat. It's like a streamer, sort of a couple of meters under the water, long ribbon, and the idea is that swimmers just stay on top of that. And there's a few reasons for that. Some say that scares away the wildlife that might be below. They don't like it, and also just keeps you on track. Great idea, but I hated the ribbon because I had to work so hard to stay up with the bastard. I actually had to really swim hard on that one to stay up with it, because I that's the other thing in open water swimming. They say throw your feet down and get going. But I've always loved a bit of a chat, and that's part of just my experience on it. I love the adventure and the interaction. So that one probably didn't talk so much because you just have to keep following the streamer. And then I got through the night and had a great swim into shore and finished. And at the time, my daughter Angelique, who's a fish in the water, I swam back to the boat, got on board. She's there in the tog. She's 10 years old, and she goes, "So, Dad, can we go for a swim now?" And I just sort of looked at her and I thought, "Oh God, I better do the good father." So we dived back in the water. I swam her into shore, and then we swam back to the boat together. So and that was probably the favourite part of my swim.
Got it. A question: when you were swimming over the swim streamer, as we call it, and you were going parallel to shore instead of perpendicular between the two islands, did the streamer was it straight or was it crooked? How was its position in the water?
To me, the whole swim had always seemed to be straight. So I think that sort of gives an idea of the currents that they're running that way. So that, and then when it turned, when we cut through, we eventually sort of we crabbed. I think the idea was just sort of crabbing along through it and you break through it in a way. But if you don't get through that, as you know, it's pretty hard to get back.
Yeah. And Cameron, your experience in Japan?
Yeah, it was actually my first attempt at Suguru was my first, did not finish. I did the swim with Steve again as a tandem, and we had quite an inexperienced pilot, and we kind of took off, and it was a day with a lot of current, and we also did it in November, which was, it can go quite cold, and we found that out quite quickly. But yeah, we as Lynton mentioned, there's a lot of water flowing through that channel, always west to east, so left to right when you're swimming from Honshu to Hokkaido, and we ended up getting pushed further east than the closest point, and that was about 13 hours in, and I think we were still about 5 kilometers from shore. And so the guys told us, well, it was pretty much like, then it's probably an extra 10 hours to get in, and in that cold water, like which we weren't trained for. At least me, I wasn't. Steve got out first, and I tried to swim for like another hour or so, and I didn't go anywhere, and pulled the plug. And so that was quite a hard pill to swallow, being not making it. But then I came back. Probably I think a year or maybe 8 months later, and tried it again by myself this time. And it's a difficult swim because obviously the currents and everything, and it can be cold. So the time I came back was early June, so it was the first swim of the season, so it was still quite cold. But you also, there's 3 slots, 3 people can swim in the space, I think it's 5 days. And if you don't get your slot, it's like it's done, you go home. And we had some bad weather, and I think on the first day we went and met the pilots, and he said like not looking good for the rest of the time. And obviously this is translated, so he says the 5 days is not looking good weather-wise. And then on the third day he said, I think the second day he said, look, tomorrow's looking bad too, and then the whole window's going to be bad, so we might as well go home. And so I wasn't very happy with that. And so I had a friend there from the South End Rowing Club. He wanted to do the same swim at the same time, different pilot. I was like kind of talking on behalf of him. And I was like, look, man, just let us try, and the guys were great. Like the Japanese pilot was great. He basically said, this is the same guy that actually had the accidents the day before Lynton swam. And obviously doesn't speak English, but we had good translators there. I pleaded with him and said, just give us a chance. And he came back and he said, all right, we'll try. But and it seemed like he said, when the weather gets bad, we're going to pull you out. So we were like, fine, as long as we have the chance to get out there and at least attempt to swim. And so we left morning early. It's still nighttime. Went to the little thumbprint, that's the thumb that sticks out, to we were staying here. It'd be swim from here to Hokkaido. We got out there, jumped in the water, and we knew we had to swim fast because it was just a race against time of the weather. And Ryan Utsumi swam with me. He's a fast swimmer. He just went bang. And I was like, I tried to keep up with him, but like I just let him go. And he had a different boat, so he just went off. And I remember just like pushing really hard the whole swim, just like in the back of my mind, like they're going to pull us out any second. And the weather was really bad in the beginning. Well, actually, weather was average in the beginning. It got really bad towards the middle of the swim. And I was just like praying that I wasn't going to see the pilot like call me in. And then suddenly, miraculously, the conditions died down a bit. And it was never too bad to swim, but like there were some points where it was a bit dodgy. You can see the boat was like going up and down next to me. But yeah, we eventually, the water conditions calmed down a bit, and we just kept going and going and going. And then suddenly I had like 100 meters to go. And the guy told me to swim to the rock and touch the rock. And that was the Ocean 7 journey finished, which was, 9 years later. 8 years later, it was very cool to finish the Ocean 7.
Great. And Antonio, up in Japan, how was your experience?
Well, as you remember, I arrived in Japan with my left shoulder in very bad shape, and so I was struggling. It was my first long swim after my 7 year without swimming, and so I arrived, and that's where I met Rohan Moore.
Okay.
He arrived in Tapi, and we started training together, and we became friends. And the two things that I remember three things that I remember from that trip is one day we're coming back from training with Rohan, and he shows me the picture after he finished the North Channel. And Rohan is, as you know, he's has darker skin than me. He was white after swimming the North Channel, so I was very afraid to see how he was. He was laying in the boat and he was just looking very, very sad, and so that put me a lot of anxiety about swimming the North Channel. The second thing is that I enjoyed, as Lynton said, the hotel in Tapi, and you won't believe this. There was a Japanese guy, the guy who was a dishwasher, who had lived in Mexico. So he spoke Spanish. And, that was really weird. And it was really nice because I got to know him, and he was doing meditation. So I went back every afternoon. You guys remember there's like the cliff at the end of the hotel. There's a cliff and you can see the ocean. Mm-hmm. We would go there in the afternoons and meditate. And so that was something that I really, really enjoyed, and eating the food. And the other thing that I remember is that every single day they had the same song in the restaurant. Yeah. Breakfast and dinner, it was the same song every single day. I don't know if you guys remember that. And then when I swam, a couple of hours before I started swimming, Jimena, my daughter, sent me a message because I was all taped with in my shoulder. And she sent me a message and said, "Dad, I know this is probably going to be the first time that you might not finish your swim, but I just want you to know that you're always going to be my hero." And that changed the way I approached the swim. I forgot about trying to get to the other side, and I was enjoying the trip. And this is something that after that swim, enjoying the process was more important than just finishing the swim.
Got it. Thank you. And I purposely left the North Channel for the end. It's simply because it's considered cold. It's got giant jellyfish. It's got many jellyfish. It's got unpredictable currents. And Antonio, what was your experience in the North Channel between Northern Ireland and Scotland?
Well, my first experience is that I was staying at Pier 36. So I come down the first day to try to get a coffee or just a bearing of what I was doing. And here's Lynton, who has just finished 2 days ago the North Channel. And the owner of, the son of the owners of Pier 36 is there too. So Lynton and I are going to go, he introduced me to Lynton. Lynton tells me he just swam. And the guy is putting on remember Lynton, that he's putting his wetsuit. And both of us just laughed and we went in. And, I wanted to go in my first swim. I wanted to go by myself because I didn't know if I was going to be able to swim. But here is Lynton, and I can't remember the name of the owner's son. And so it's a lot of pressure for me because I didn't know if I was going to be able to hold, to be able to swim. So remember, Lynton, we swam all the way to the boat, and we came back. And I was all the time saying, "You can't quit, you can't quit." I mean, everybody's gonna be laughing at you. And that was a great, a great immersion. And I spent about 3 weeks in Donaghadee trying to get acclimatized. It was a wonderful experience at Pier 36. Lewis and Margaret and the whole family was just tremendous. And but for me, it was very stressful as well because it was my last swim. And as you remember, Adam Skolnick calls me 2 days before my supposedly last day of my swim. And Adam Skolnick is a writer for the New York Times. And he tells me that he has sold the news to the New York Times, and that he wants to talk to me. And I said, well, I don't know if he's going to be able to swim, let alone if I'm going to finish. I said, no, but they're sending a photographer. So a guy from Dublin was coming to the swim, and I didn't know if I was going to swim. So I talked to the editor in New York, and I say, are you sure you want to send somebody? I mean, there's I'm not sure they're going to be able to do it. And the captain, Quinton Nelson, as you might know him, is a guy from very few words. So every day he was just telling me that I wasn't going to be able to swim the next day. So this is my last day. And he comes to me in the afternoon and says, it doesn't look good. There might be a possibility, but I don't know today. So if you can go and sleep and wake up tomorrow morning to get ready, and I'll come at 7 o'clock and tell you if it's a go. So I go to sleep, come down next day, and at 6:45, Quinton is there. And he tells me, it's iffy, but if you want to, as the camera was saying, if you want to try, let's go. And we did, and I finished. And my coming to into the end was very, very complicated, as everybody else's probably. And it was the big surprise was that I finished, and I had two surprises in front of me. The first one is that, I thought the article would come out at the end of the sports page in the New York Times. So I fly from England to the States, to Houston. It's a Sunday, and I arrive and I turn my cell phone, and I have messages from all the friends I haven't seen in years. And everybody's telling me, have you seen the New York Times? And I was in the front page of the Sunday sports of the New York Times. I couldn't believe it. I mean, that's just something that I never thought it would happen in my lifetime. And then on a Sunday, 3 or 4 weeks later, I got a message from the Federation saying that they had serious doubts that I had finished properly my North Channel swim. And can you imagine? I mean, I had finished Ocean 7, and the Federation was questioning it. And I have to say that you, Steven, and especially at that moment, I hired the extra super duper lawyer, Lynton, who did a pro bono, and he wrote a very fancy letter that I'm sure send the right message. And I finally finished Ocean 7 because I got my certificate that I had finished the North Channel. So that was it, Steven.
Right. And Cameron, what was your experience in the North Channel?
Yeah, definitely the hardest of the 7. I love swimming in cold water, but I definitely struggle in the cold. And so this was the most nerve-wracking swim I'd ever done. I'd never been so, even like the latest long swims I've done, I wasn't as nervous as I was before this swim. And what made me more nervous, it was the first swim of that season. No one had managed to make the swim yet. This was 2016, and it was quite a cold year too. I think the water was between 10.5 and 12 degrees centigrade, and which made me more nervous. And also the day before, I think it was 2 days before, Michelle Macy, who is a legendary swimmer, she's finished the Ocean 7, and she at that time held the record for the fastest North Channel. She'd done it before. She made an attempt with at the North Channel, and she was pulled out after 3 hours. I think the reason was cold, and I think I remember that because Quentin Nelson was my pilot, and he was her pilot too, and he said she just wasn't comfortable, and she wanted to get out. So, and she's obviously been someone that I looked up to, because obviously having done the Ocean 7 and been quite an amazing swimmer. And then there's me, who's only done a couple of channel swims up until then. You know, I was nervous, maybe more nervous. But I had like the day of, so Quentin actually wanted me to go the day after her, and I was looking at the weather myself, and I was like, the weather doesn't look that good. And anyway, I went down in the morning with everything prepared to swim that day. I didn't like what I saw, and I didn't have a good feeling about it. And the weather was looking good for the next day. And I was like, Quentin, I was like, hey man, like I actually kind of want to swim tomorrow. And he got a little bit aggressive with me, and he's like, no man, you swim now. Like you need to get a chance, you swim. And I really I full credit to Quentin. He's an amazing pilot. But I wasn't in the right mindset, and I basically said, look, I'm going to do it tomorrow. And it was my slot, so I was able to choose. So he said that's cool, and then I went home and I had a great day. You know, everything was packed already. Went back the next morning to attempt to swim, and it was perfect conditions. Well, not perfect, and it's never perfect there, but it was like as good as I'd ever seen it, and it was as good as we're going to get, I think. And so we jumped in and started the swim. I had my brother and mom was in the crew, which was great. And I trained pretty hard, but I was still worried about the cold. And so for the first 6 hours, my whole strategy was to swim it hard and just try to get it over with quick. I think that was my only shot at this. And at 6 hours, my shoulders were sore from just trying to swim fast, and I was obviously cold. Been staying up multiple times, and which wasn't, I feel like the stings there are like mosquito bites. There's nothing bad about them, but they're just lots of them. So if you get stung 1,000 times, it's 1,000 mosquito bites. It could be quite bad. But yeah, I've been stung a few times, and the jellyfish are pretty ugly and big. They just look like big, gross aliens. They're big, like probably bigger than a person, bigger than me. Anyway, at 6 hours, I was struggling with my shoulders, and I was cold, and I wasn't feeling good about it. And I went to the boat, and I asked Quentin, like, in my head, I'm thinking, man, I'm not doing so well. Like, how much do I have to go here? Like, I'm even close to halfway. And at 6 hours, he said, no, man, you're way over halfway. If you carry on, you're going to break the speed record. And so obviously I'd probably done like close to 2/3 then. And that really that lifted me, and I carried on. I slowed down a lot because of the cold and because I was tired. So I eventually finished, I think, in about 12 hours. And like, I remember my brother, he swam with me the last hour, and I don't even remember him being there. I saw photos afterwards, and I was like, I didn't know you swam with me. And he's like, yeah, man, you kept looking at me like weird. You didn't know who I was or what I was, because I was just from the cold. I was pretty delirious, and yeah, I finished the swim. It took me a long time to get warm again, and yeah, I think Ireland's a special place. I love it in Ireland. The people are so awesome, and the water is so good, so nice there, except for the cold, obviously. Definitely the hardest one for sure.
Yeah. And Lynton, now you did your North Channel just within that 2-week window, correct? After the English Channel.
Yeah, it was just 2.5 weeks after the English Channel. I think, as Cameron said, Ireland certainly has this special feeling, and a lot of us have a connection with it. I had a grandmother, Kitty O'Mara from Tipperary, so doesn't get much more connected there. And when you go there, I mean, the cold, the reputation of the North Channel. I think when I did it back in 2017, I think I was the third Aussie, so there's only 2 Aussies that had done it before. Wasn't much known over here about it, and I was fortunate to meet the incredible Infinity crew with Podrick, Jacqueline, and Milo, who run a lot of channel swims over there. They've been great friends and great supporters over the years, and I think they're a very calming influence. And once again, I was fortunate to have my family on board, so it's always fun. So and I think you got to take every little advantage you can, because, as Karen was alluding to, it's such a tough swim, and it's cold and it's brutal, and it changes, but you just have to have the right mindset, and if you got the right crew with you, you're halfway there. When I went there, as you said, it was sort of a couple of weeks after the English Channel. My approach to it was, I looked at the English Channel as the warm-up for the North Channel. It was the only way that I could rationalise it, and that's not to diminish the English Channel for one moment at all, because, as we know, that's the Mount Everest of swimming. It's certainly the pinnacle. But if the English Channel's Mount Everest, well, the North Channel's K2. It's a slightly different level, and it was a special swim for me as well. I mean, I was doing some sort of charity work at the time beforehand, and one of the ones that we were doing was carrying 41, which was paying recognition to our soldiers that lost their lives in Afghanistan and others as well. So I think at that stage we'd lost 41 soldiers from Australia, and so before the swim, I laid 41 poppies before the swim, and at the end of the swim, we laid 41 poppies on the Scottish shores as well. So any time that it was getting tough out there, you just had to sort of cast your mind to a different place. And I always think just how incredibly lucky I am and how fortunate I am to be in that position out in the ocean and being able to have the opportunity to get to shore. So I think, from that perspective, it was very special, and also as I say, the light-hearted crew. Running joke was, although we had to get to the harbour so I could get my free beer. So, so if you land in the harbour there, the publican comes down with a pint. But we didn't quite make it. We swam to the cliff and got a bit bloody. But it was a tough swim, and probably the first 5 or 6 Ks took a while to get the soreness out of the muscles from the English Channel swim. But after that, just sort of settled into a groove, and we got there, and it was a great day, and kicked on that night.
Yeah, great. So, I mean, everything from the Triple Crown, Lynton, you did it in 3 months, to the swim around Barbados, to Antonio's 2-way crossing in Catalina Channel. All these are absolutely incredible. But what I really respect about you 3 gentlemen is, we have Cameron as a cyber security expert. He's in Silicon Valley, and Antonio's dealing with Mexican politics and being an entrepreneur in the educational world. And Lynton, you're dealing with all your legal issues and courts and issues, and you live such fascinating lives on the dry land. What are the things that you've picked up in all your travels to these Ocean 7 that is applicable to your line of work on dry land? And I know, Antonio, you'll have to go shortly, so maybe we can start off with you. And I think this is the key. These are the lessons I would like you to share with our audience. Go ahead, Antonio.
Well, yes, thank you, Steven. When I think about Ocean 7, I think that each one of the oceans taught me a lesson. And this is a lesson that I repeat to my students and to my work environment. And as I said, what we're living right now is something that we never would have thought 6 months ago. And that's what happened to me in Gibraltar. And when I think about Molokai, I had self-doubt, and people do not like to think that they have self-doubt. Taking the risk of doing Catalina is something that I always tell. When you deal with politicians, they always like the safe things, and they don't want to take risks. And so I always use I tell them, let's do things differently. Let's take the risk, and I'm sure we're going to be able to achieve better things if we do the things differently. And in education, that's sometimes difficult to do. And then probably, to me, the biggest lesson is that we all have fears. And for me, going and swimming in cold water in the North Channel, why my biggest fear? That's why I went every single month to San Francisco for a year, because the only way I was going to be able to conquer my fear was to get into the cold water and experience that and see how I was going to be able to overcome it. So for me, Ocean 7 was a way to learn from nature, from the oceans, and that's why I try to give to tell in my talks and the people who are around me, my students, and when I do my work, is to remember them how small we are as human beings, and how much we can achieve if we set our minds to it. I'd love to have seen you guys, Cameron, Lynton, Steven, but I have to go back. I'm in Cuernavaca right now and have to go back to Mexico City. So it was a wonderful talk. It was a very long program. And before I go, my book, we're gonna have a presentation at the Southern Rowing Club and the Dolphin Club next Thursday. So hopefully you guys could be able to join us. I know it's gonna be at 6 o'clock Pacific Standard Time, but we'll be talking about the book. And if you haven't read it, read it, okay? Thank you very much. I'll see you guys. See you later. Bye-bye.
See you.
Thank you. And Cameron, what are the lessons that you like sharing with your coworkers, people around you, that you picked up from the Ocean 7 and all your other fantastic athletic achievements?
Yeah, I think I personally learned from my failures, especially. My biggest failure was I didn't make the Tsuguru first attempt, and the second attempt, and then the first attempt to try to swim around Barbados. And I think the reasons why I failed, kind of, I think I wanted to make it too badly. I was kind of attached to the outcome, and so what I've done recently, some of the big swims, especially like my latest longest one on the ocean rowing, is that I've obviously kept the goal of wanting to get across, do whatever I'm trying to do, like swimming from Barbados to St. Lucia or the North Channel or whatever. Have that goal in mind, and that'd be very specific, and obviously want to make it more than anything. But on the opposite side is to kind of lose any attachment you have to that outcome. And if you make it, you make it. If you don't make it, you don't make it. It's not the end of the world. And just by losing attachments, on one extreme, you so much want to make it, and the other extreme, you kind of lose your attachment to it. That kind of mindset, it's really helped me kind of when I'm in the middle of a swim, and the focus is there, but I don't really care if I make it or not make it. That balance just helped me to enjoy what I do so much, and just enjoy being in the water. Because at the end of the day, we do this sport because we love the ocean, we love water, we love doing these awesome events and potentially inspiring people. And when I've use this mindset of like being unattached to an amazing swim, like it's really helped me to kind of live in the moment and really enjoy the kind of the small bits of the of each journey that I've taken. So for me, like that's what I've taken into real life, whether it be my business, sales meeting, going to a sales meeting and meeting the potential clients and saying, obviously I want this guy to be my client, but I want the best intention for that client too. And like, if nothing happens, then like, at least I met somebody and it's been a great experience. That's really helped me in life too. So I definitely I have swimming to thank for that, because I probably wouldn't have made those realizations if I hadn't like tried these big swims and not made it, because I had a big ego or something. Like these swims have helped me to kind of get rid of the ego that I had before, and like now I just want to do these swims because I really enjoy them. There's just like through my charity, it gets the benefits too, and I get to share these swims with some amazing people on my crew and on shore. So I think like my swimming career has been a very like a humbling experience for me personally.
Great. And Lynton?
Yes, Steve, I'll endorse what Cameron's said there as well. I think with it, just purely from a business perspective, the analogies I draw there is always begin with the outcome in mind. So, look at the end result. See yourself as already finished the swim, but you've got to have that outcome. You've got to have that pathway to get there, and it's the commitment to the process. It's the detailed planning. It's surrounding yourself with the right people, the right team, everyone rowing and swimming in the same direction as you. And as I say, I think I said earlier on, it's probably one of the greatest team sports I've ever been involved in, is ocean swimming. And I think that can translate across to your business environment, is making sure you're surrounded with the right people and working with the right people, going in the right direction, having that flexibility. I think in swimming you have to be incredibly flexible and adaptable to the environment, to what's going on, to the changing conditions, and that's no different in life. We've all got our challenges there. You've got to go with the flow to an extent, and I think just having that never give up, die hard attitude for anything you do, and aim for excellence. Like, always try to achieve your best, give it your best, but have fun along the journey as well. As Cam said, look, it doesn't matter if you don't make it, but if you've given it 100%, that's all that matters.
Yeah. And what impresses me too about both of you is you have these charitable goals. You've got your event, obviously, as you've discussed, you've obviously want to achieve what you set out, but you've got this greater goal of helping others. And Cameron, Lynton, if you could explain what those goals are and how do you concretely help other people? Go ahead, Cameron, sorry. It's a little early in the morning for me.
I feel very lucky to be able to support a cause over the long term that I'm very proud of. I grew up in Cape Town in South Africa, and I grew up relatively privileged. And especially in Africa, you get to it's very evident on a daily basis that you are, because you're just from driving to school every day, you see underprivileged kids who are not even going to school, let alone a good school. And so I kind of grew up with that feeling that I was lucky. And then as soon as I started doing like more of these endurance events like cycling and rowing and swimming, I wanted to start leveraging that for a cause. And in 2011, I basically spoke to a few friends when I was living in London, South Africans and Zimbabweans, and we kind of made this plan to start raising money for a cause that we were passionate about, and that was education in a region of South Africa that's very poor and very rural, but it's very beautiful, and it's where we spend a lot of time. And so that's where the charity started, and there were about 20 of us athletes. Obviously, for good reasons, people have gotten married and had kids since then, except for me. So I'm the only one that kind of carried on going. But it's been a very rewarding experience. And we're probably 9 years in now, and we have amazing leadership of the charities led by some amazing people. I don't have to run it, luckily. We have a guy called Kevin Jennings, who was Obama's Deputy Assistant Secretary of Education in the United States, who I met in 2014, that has pretty much run the charity since then. And now we have a guy called Dan Sachs, who's an MD at Boston Consulting Group, who's running the charity. And we have 15 board members who put in a lot of volunteering time to work with the communities in the Eastern Cape and in Zimbabwe. And so, I just, obviously I'm very involved, but I feel like sometimes I just have to train and do these crazy things. And I'm helped on every angle with the fundraising. And so, yeah, we have a great team right now, and it's continuing to grow, which is exponentially, which is nice. This year is tough.
What is the name, and how do people reach or learn more about your charity?
Oh yeah, thanks, Steve. Yeah, it's called the Ubunye Challenge. It's UBUNYE challenge.com. And yeah, Ubunye means teamwork or togetherness in the local language, WOWSA, which is the language spoken in the Eastern Cape, which I studied at school, but I don't speak very well anymore. Yeah, and so we currently have earlier this year we finished this fundraising campaign where we funded a project to give tablets to kids who in the region. So we've set up 16 early childhood development sites in this area, and now we're starting to help them to get taught with tablets and internet facilities. And then our recent fundraising campaign is to help raise funds for a vehicle to get all this food to these very hard to reach places where these families, supply chains are cut off, so the families in those communities are literally like not eating. And so, yeah, so that's been our latest fundraising project. So any help with that will be amazing. You can just go to our website, bunyechallenge.com, and click the donate button if you feel like it.
Thank you very much. And Lynton?
Yeah, wonderful stuff that Cameron's doing there back in his home country. And I guess my involvement in charity's been on a different level. It's more been supporting organisations that are already set up. For instance, Children's Hospital Foundation, that was something that was a bit dear to my heart on a couple of the swims, or a few of the swims that I did. And the connections that you make there are lasting. But one of the clips that we ran turned out that it was the mother taught my two boys, the young son that she'd lost, and through cancer. So we're raising funds for the kids who are really struggling at that stage of their lives, and not continuing on. So I always remember she got in contact with me on one of my swims, and she said, Lynton, anytime you're out there, you're doing it a bit tough. You've got two little angels on your shoulder, young Cooper on one and Scott on the other. And they're always with me for part of some swim. And once again, as I've said before, I think just reminding yourself how lucky you are to be in the position that we carry. And then also, with recognising those who have made the ultimate sacrifice for our various countries as well along the way. And if you can shine a bit of a light or bring that to everyone's attention, I think it's a helpful thing. And I guess too, just like with the swimming, is with what's going on with the planet out there, with the plastics and the degradation of the ocean as well. So making us more conscious that we've got to work better, improving where we live.
Yeah. And thank you. And last question of this interview will be a difficult one. 100 years from now, 200 years from now, when people think of you two gentlemen, what are 3 words that you would like people to remember your legacy? Just 3 words you go, God, I'd like to be known as Cameron.
I would say maybe giving. That's two words, but high expectations. And also, I think just tenacity. I think, like, you know, all these swims and the charity projects, they don't come easy. You have to keep working on them, and it's just, it takes yourself and like a good group of people to accomplish goals. And yeah.
Great, wonderful.
Okay.
Lynton, you?
Yeah, that is a tough one, isn't it?
I don't mean to put you on the spot, but
I would say hopefully supportive, encouraging, and loving.
got it. Wonderful, wonderful. I think with those tenacity, supportive, giving, encouraging, those are wonderful words to end this great hour and a half of discussions with you, gentlemen. I mean, thank you very much for your time, and again, keep on doing what you're doing. Your mentors, your icons, and you give a lot of inspiration to a lot of people. So thank you very much.
Well, thanks, Steve, and you do an amazing job as well with the swimming community around the world. So thanks for your amazing efforts.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Yeah, thanks to you.
All right.
Thanks for having
Take care, gentlemen.
Great
Bye.
seeing
Thanks
you.
for having me. Yeah, great to see you, Ken. Time for a beer, mate.